Question number 7, Carmel Sepuloni.
To the Associate Minister of Social Development, how much money has the government invested in the Growing Up in New Zealand study, broken down by development costs and annual running costs?
The Honourable Anne Tolley.
On behalf of the Associate Minister for Social Development, since the start of the data collection in 2007-2008 until 2015-16, the total cost of the Growing Up in New Zealand study has been $40.19 million. Of this total, $39.36 million was towards contract payments to the University of Auckland, which included running costs, and the remaining $830,000 towards contract management and reviews, which were incurred by Subaru. The development costs incurred by MSD prior to 2007-2008 are approximately $1.5 million. This would take the total cost to date to approximately $41.92 million.
Supplementary question.
Supplementary question, Carmel Sepuloni.
Can she confirm that funding for the Growing Up in New Zealand study contract has been cut by 2/3, meaning approximately 5,000 children and their families will be dumped from the study by the government? If not, how will the 5,000 children unfunded by government be retained in the study?
The Honourable Anne Tolley.
Mr. Speaker, this government wanted a contract for service with data being placed in the Stats New Zealand Data Lab to complement the very sophisticated data this government is developing to inform its social investment decisions. However, this wasn't able to be achieved, and the government has now agreed to fund the University of Auckland to undertake the 8-year data collection wave of the Growing Up in New Zealand study with a sample of about 2,000 children, larger than the similar highly international regarded New Zealand studies. This confirms funding through to 2018-2019. Statistical experts were consulted by both parties to finalise a sampling approach which enables the research and analysis that is needed to answer the critical questions, and the study will continue to support quality research and analysis whilst being more sustainable in the long term.
Supplementary question.
Supplementary question, Carmel Sepuloni.
How does she reconcile cutting the funding by 2/3 of the largest and most comprehensive longitudinal study undertaken in New Zealand when the Children's Commissioner has commented that, quote, such robust longitudinal New Zealand data is essential for informed policy making, end quote?
The Honourable Anne Tolley.
And we agree. This government, the contract for funding Growing Up in New Zealand study has been reshaped to future-proof the study and allow it to become more sustainable over the life of the study. The government would like to see the study run until the children are 21 years old, as originally intended, as long as it continues to be of value by providing useful and accessible data. This government is committed to funding social science research to inform decision-making, and in fact there has been a significant increase in research funding in recent years.
Supplementary question.
Supplementary question, Carmel Sepuloni.
Given that the Growing Up in New Zealand study is the only New Zealand study that includes statistically valid samples for Māori and Pacific children, how can she justify reducing the funding by 2/3, and what are the implications of this cut for an increasingly diverse New Zealand?
The Honourable Anne Tolley.
On behalf of the Associate Minister for Social Development, as I said, statistical experts were consulted by both parties to finalise a sampling approach that maintains that diverse group of New Zealanders and that enables the research and analysis that's needed to answer the critical questions.
Supplementary question.
Supplementary question, Carmel Sepuloni.
Has she been advised of the ethical issues with respect to the children and their families who consented to being part of this study but now may not be included for the full 21 years?
Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Anne Tolley.
On behalf of the Associate Minister for Social Development, the most ethical issue here is about getting the data that has been collected used. All families have contributed valuable information to the study, and we now have a wealth of data that can be accessed for research to inform social sector decision-making about New Zealand's recent babies and their development and the place of mothers, family, community and social services.
Supplementary question.
Supplementary question, Carmel Sepuloni.
Does the government realise that in order to address some of the serious issues we are facing as a nation, evidence is going to be crucial for informing policy, or would they prefer as little evidence as possible so they do not have to address child poverty, the impact of housing instability, inequalities in education, or the health issues impacting our children?
The Honourable Anne Tolley.
Speaker, on behalf of the Associate Minister of Social Development, I reject all those assertions. As I've said in the House, the government has agreed to fund the University of Auckland to undertake the 8-year data collection wave of GUINs with a sample of about 2,000 children, and funding is confirmed through to 2018-19. However, this study has always been considered to be working towards self-funding. It was never set up with the expectation that government would continue to fund it, and we have confirmed funding through to 18-19, by which stage they should have confirmed other funding to allow them to continue.